I think creativity is really important because it gives people voice. And that voice contributes to the narrative of who we are as individuals and as groups. I've been delivering rap music workshops for very nearly 30 years now. It's a receptacle for the individual's voice. So you can focus it on any theme you want, any theme that's relevant. It could be about the school's identity. It could be about bullying. It could be about racism. It could be about gender issues. It could be about anything you want. It could be about the Industrial Revolution. So it's a brilliant educational tool. Music is a tremendously unifying force. So in terms of the power of creative expression to create culture, well, the music itself bonds people together. Any form of creative activity together, it's going to build rapport. You're going to lay foundations that can really help people out further down the line.
Hi, and welcome back to Creative Minds Shaping the Future. I'm your host, Emma Palastanga. I'm an educator, author, and now podcast producer, curious to discuss a range of views on creativity and curriculum. In Series 2, we explore creative expression and why it is important for all of us. Martin is a live poet, creative educator, musician, and writing tutor. He was also the Young People's Laureate for Wales in 2013 to 2016, and he is in a global folk band. Martin began his practice as a creative educator in Liverpool 1996 when he was put on a scheme for artists claiming unemployment benefit. Since then, he has facilitated workshops with over 40,000 participants in a very wide range of settings, including schools, youth groups, youth detention centres and adult prisons, LGBTQ groups, homes for the elderly, and psychiatric wards, to mention just a few. Martin's work is centred on his belief that through creative practice we build key life skills such as self-esteem, resilience, and the confidence to communicate in a range of ways. His most popular workshop is on rap music, which he can tailor to address any specific topic, theme, or issue. This is closely linked to his passion for slam poetry, a vibrant, raw, and competitive art form, emphasising the impact of performance as much as the words themselves. I'm delighted to have met Martin at a gathering of creative minds in London, and so pleased that he has joined me today so that we can dig deeper into why he feels poetry, rap, and creative expression in general is important for us all. Hi Martin, welcome.
Hi Emma, thanks for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. I'll start with the first question, Martin, that I ask all my guests. Why is creative expression important?
For me, it's imperative. Just speaking personally, I've always had a creative practice all my life. And I think most people as children do. They like playing, they like running around, they like singing, they like dancing. And that just carried on for me. And for me, it was important because it was a place where I could feel peaceful. So I liked reading as a child. I learned to read very young. I found solace and sanctuary in books, in that it was a safe place where my mind could go. I didn't have to deal with reality. And I think creativity in some ways is the same, in that we can process our inner world by externalizing it. And it gives us a safe way to do that. So I think that's really, really important. And that's the personal. And for me, that's always been something I've loved to do. So it was very natural for me to move into doing creative education, because once I got a chance to do that, I was like, well, I like doing this anyway. So let me share my passion with you and encourage you to be creative too. But I think on the wider scale, just looking at it socially, I think creativity is really important because it gives people voice. And that voice contributes to the narrative of who we are as individuals and as groups. And then that narrative strengthens itself and becomes richer through the sharing of the different strands of it. So I'm a great advocate and a true believer in the power of personal expression to create culture. I think culture is the interface where human beings meet, where we create the communities that hold us as individuals and as groups, and we create the identities. Within that, I would say creativity is great for the individual, it's great for the group, it strengthens the society because it puts people's voice in the middle. And then ideally, we function within a culture where the individual supports the group and the group supports the individual. And that happens through the personal expression.
Yeah, I love that. Like you say, it's about the individual and the group and the coming together of the two. And it is really powerful indeed. Thank you for that. What do you feel then that poetry or rap in particular brings to the school curriculum?
Well, I would say in one word, it brings voice.
Mm.
When we bring our focus onto what the learner has to say, then we're giving them license to use their voice. And that relates back to my first answer as well, in terms of when we're talking about the individual and the group, how does that actually happen? Well, the model that I'm talking about here, for me, came into my life, particularly through hip hop culture as a young person. And then that led me on a journey of cultural exploration in life, where I was raising my consciousness and learning about different models of cultural interaction. And then with hip hop culture having its roots in West African oral tradition, I began to be exposed to that model that we're talking about. So we have to give credit to where that's come from, because that certainly is me relating my own practice to oral tradition, but particularly informed by West African oral tradition as it's come into my life through the culture of the African diaspora.
Mm-hmm.
A British person of European descent, that's been a redemptive force in my life. So that's been powerfully important to me. And then looking at that in terms of education, it's a brilliant educational tool, particularly hip hop culture, in that it's a receptacle for the individual's voice. So you can focus it on any theme you want, any theme that's relevant. It could be about the school's identity, it could be about bullying, it could be about racism, it could be about gender issues, it could be about anything you want, it could be about the Industrial Revolution. So it's a brilliant educational tool. Then add in the fact that it's culturally relevant still. I mean, I've been delivering rap music workshops for very nearly 30 years now. I started off looking like the participants' big brother. Now I kind of look like their granddad. Older, they've got younger, and
They've got younger.
yeah, but I still play with it because I've got some skill and I'm engaging, and it's more fun than the normal lesson on the whole, and it's still culturally relevant because it's voice, it's people's stories. So hip hop itself, I mean, the art of rap is hugely democratic. It's music without the pressure of singing. I mean, singing's a very specialist skill. I love singing, but I understand the fear of it. I understand the fear of getting it wrong. I understand the fear of making a horrible noise and everyone hearing your voice and it not being right. You know, it's a naked form of expression. So rap, on the other hand, all you need is to be able to talk and have some point of relevance to your lived experience. That's it. So we virtually all do it.
I was going to ask you, what do you think it is particularly about rap that feels safe? And I think you've explained it there. It does feel safe because you're not having to risk putting your musical voice out there. But I guess you've got the security of the rhythm and a structure that then enables you to say whatever it is you want to say.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. And I think it's really important that you mentioned the rhythm, because the music is a huge point of access
Mm.
in that it puts a vibe in the room. It makes it culturally relevant. Music is a tremendously unifying force. So in terms of relating back to the power of creative expression to create culture, well, the music itself bonds people together.
Yeah.
And then the words come in on the intellectual level. And then we got a fully functioning mothership.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Have you ever found children are reluctant to join in?
Oh yeah, loads. Uh, I worked out a strategy for that quite early on. People would, I mean, generally they'd participate. I could encourage them to participate a little bit, but then the big stumbling block was when it was time to record our voices.
Mm.
Like, no way am I getting on the mic. So the strategy I developed was at the start of the session, because we do warm-up games and there's an introduction at the start, which I try and do a circle time if the class is small enough or the group is small enough that we can sit in a circle. And then I make the point that whether people join in or not, in this workshop really isn't that important. It's voluntary,
Mm-hmm.
but developing skills that they can use when it is important to them. So I make it relevant to their lives. 3 good examples being, at some point they're going to have to do some kind of presentation in life. A really good example being a job interview.
Mm.
You know you're good for this job, you want this job, but if you're too scared to actually go in there and talk to the people and pitch yourself, then you're not going to get the job. They're going to give it to someone else who can talk their way into it. So you're going to need that confidence at some point to communicate. God forbid you ever find yourself in a potentially violent or threatening situation, you can actually defend yourself with your voice, and then there's no question about that. Voices are so powerful. So, you may have to speak out in that moment. And then also, in terms of how we build emotional relation with people, it's really important to have the confidence to share how we feel, to say what we need in life and to say how other people are affecting us. It's really important to have that confidence to be emotionally articulate. So those are 3 examples. So I'm trying to hit them off there on, like, you can get a job, you can keep yourself safe, and you can get, like, emotionally close to people, and hopefully that covers at least one of their needs in life. I've already flagged up, you might find this scary, but if you're the person who finds this really scary, you're actually exactly the person who needs to give it a go. I would say 99% of people that I work with actually end up having a really good time and using their voices. And also, you can make it accessible. Say, normally someone's got a friend, so you find someone who's confident, and then if you've got lines of rap that are 1 bar long and there's a rhyming word at the end of them, then the less confident person could just join in with the backing vocal on the rhyming word at the same time as their friend. So, you find ways in to get people engaging on a level that's acceptable for them, but is also challenging, but not pushing them over the edge,
Yeah, that's brilliant. I love the context. I'm a real believer that we need to give children a context for their learning. And you've done that. You've given them 3 reasons why their voice is important. And if you don't gel with one of them, you might at least gel with 1 or 2 of the others and give them that confidence. And I also love the fact that you've said you don't have to speak in this session, but understand that your voice is important, it's valid, and you can use it in multiple ways. So if you don't use it today, listen and learn from today, and then maybe use that in your future. It takes the pressure off, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's the idea. Yeah. It's also giving them the opportunity to make the choice. If we're going to learn anything, we have to choose to learn. They're going to challenge themselves. They need to choose to challenge that. I mean, I'm not a sergeant major in the army. It's not. I'm trying to build a culture of inclusion, not an authoritarian regime.
Yeah, and that's really nice too, giving children that choice. You can either just sit and be a passive observer today, and I know we can't do that day to day in our schools, but I'm sure we could utilize some of what you've said by presenting it. I think Hal Roberts would explain that as botheredness. He talks about botheredness and supporting children into their learning by giving them the reason why we're doing this. If every teacher could do that for each lesson, and the reason we're doing this is, it just kind of builds that agency and that desire to learn, I think, rather than, right, it's maths, that's why we're doing this. I remember as a child annoying my teacher by saying, but why? Why are we doing this? And I really do still feel passionately, if we can explain to children why we're doing something, it gives them relevance to the task at hand.
I think that you used the word agency there, and I think that's really, really important. When we give the learners some agency, then we're putting them in the center of the educational process. And I think that's really, really important. And that's a wider perspective on what creativity brings into schools. I think it humanizes the institution, because we're onto the voice of the individual, whether that's vocal or visual or however they're expressing themselves. We're centering them in the process and giving them the agency to center themselves in it. And that's what we need to do if we're going to give people a chance to educate themselves.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Thank you. But the other question I had here was, how has poetry or rap had an impact on your own life? And you talked about that at the beginning, really, but I didn't know if you wanted to expand on that.
Yeah, it's been huge. It's huge. I mean, I can think really that everything in my life, from this conversation to the money to pay for my phone that's recording it, that I became via, to the carpet I'm sitting on, the window I'm looking out of, all of that has come into my life through my creative activities over the last 30 years or so. My children, I met my wife through it. Yeah, just all of it, all the money. When I say all the money, it sounds like I made a packet. I haven't, but I've been able to pay the bills.
Yeah.
And that's all just come through that coming into my life, because I was unemployed, not in a very good way. I mean, my youth and was not a good time for me psychologically. I was carrying quite a lot of troubles in my head. So coming my early 20s, I was without an income, and I mentioned, and I started writing in a diary. I'd always loved reading as a kid. And my first ambition was to be a novelist. And then I got into music as a teenager and started pursuing musical activities. And then the music had started dying down for me. And I was at a crossroads in my life. It was my early 20s. And I started writing in a diary and just rediscovering some of my love of literacy, which I'd put on hold while I got into music. And I mentioned it to a woman I knew. I went to a party and I mentioned it to her. And she said, "Oh, if you like writing, you should come see these poets." And this is September 1993. And she worked in a venue in London called the ICA, and she got me a ticket. So I went to the ICA by myself, feeling really socially anxious, sat down at a table with a load of strangers. And it was an event where there was a performance by a touring band of poets called the Nuyorican Poets Cafe. They'd come out of a venue in New York called the Nuyorican Poets Cafe, and it was their 20-year anniversary world tour. And although there had been some activity around slam poetry in London previously, so a shout out to Farrago and to the UPS crew, the Urban Poets Society, really this was the night that slam poetry arrived in the UK from New York, and I happened to be there. I happened to get given a ticket. And there it was. It was like the Holy Grail arriving in King Arthur's court. There was an epiphany in my life. I was really lucky I had an epiphany, because I said, that's me. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a spoken word artist. I'm going to be one of these poets. Because it combined my love of literacy and my love of literature and writing and my self-belief. My teachers gave me confidence in myself. And when the rest of my life was really not fulfilling, let's put it that way, there was one thing I could hold on to, which was like, I remember walking home from school when I was about 13 going, "Never mind, Mark, at least you're the best at English," and like that was like a life ring for me. So that kept my head above the water, and so then there I am, 10 years later after that, sitting there going, well, I could be good at that. I could be that kid who stood up in class and read his story out again in this context. So, and also it was musically relevant. They were from New York. It was really diverse as well. When you look at where spoken words it's become pretty much rapping without beats. But that show, they had one punk poet. They had another dude who was doing sound poetry with massive long nail extensions over an overhead projector on the wall behind him. And he was like, like long sound vowel inspired poetry. Then there was one who was just straight up hip hop, another one who was very hip but was telling narrative stories that was written in poetry but wasn't rhyming. And then there was another woman who just did dramatic monologue. So this wasn't generic, it wasn't conformist, it was expressive. And that's what I loved about it, because I'll be honest with you, back then I saw white people get on the mic at hip hop dudes and get booed before they even said anything. And I was like, I'm never doing that. No way. Like, honestly, I saw people get booed off. They hadn't even said anything. It was just like, don't even bother trying. Yeah. Just because of their ethnicity. And I've tried my best to pursue that inspiration. Hopefully the best is yet to come. It's given me a path. For better or worse, it's given me something to do and a passion to pursue in my life, and a passion that has integrity. If you can find something in life that your heart's in, then everything else that comes through that is going to be relevant to you and is going to have some resonance to you. So good things will come into your life. I'm really, truly fortunate that I haven't found myself in a job that hasn't fed my soul.
I think you mentioned there about the opportunity. That's what struck me. It was the opportunity of meeting that person that got you that ticket alongside your knowledge of English and your love for English and your passion for music. But it was the opportunity that brought them all together. And I think we have to remember that for our children. If we never give them a lump of clay and say, have a go at shaping that into something, how do we know if they're any good at sculpture or not?
I agree 100%. And I mean, I'd like to think everybody's good at something, or at least a number of things. But unless you get a chance, unless you get a chance to have a go at a few different things, you might not find out what it is. Particularly if you've got a bit of a niche skill.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like it might be that you're really, really good at something, but it isn't in the mainstream. And also, that exactly the way you phrase that, have a go at making that into something, but don't worry if you get it wrong. So that's another key power of creative curriculum is there's no wrong or right answer to this. Try a few ideas, pick out the best one.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful. I think that is something unique that creativity does bring to our lives, really, but also the curriculum. One of my guests actually spoke about the fact that we don't necessarily have an answer. There is no final answer. It's just exploration. There is no singular outcome. It could be multiple different things, all of which are correct and all of which are very personal. And it also breeds resilience. So if we are resilient in creative expression or the creative arts, then we can be quite resilient in other areas of our life. So it's like a training ground, if you like, with the creative arts.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say is absolutely a training ground. I mean, I was doing lots of work for about 10, 15 years. The backbone of my business was work with young people who were being categorized as what they call NEETs, you know. So school hadn't really worked for them. They weren't qualified. They weren't going into training yet. And then there was funding to give these people life experiences to move them in the direction of productive activity. And I realized I was a life trainer. I was going in doing a rap music workshop for a day with them. But actually, I was a life trainer. This was about being able to function in a group. It was about having a good time working with other people. It was about being able to write something on a piece of paper. It's about using your voice in front of a group. These were life skills. It's cultural life training, and it's just natural. I'm amazed it isn't more popular. But I guess that's the political point around who makes executive decisions. But really, I mean, I just time and time again, teachers have gone, oh, I didn't know they could do that. You know, I didn't know they could do that. It's like very often a kid who maybe is a little bit difficult to manage in the classroom, but they're too clever for it. If we're not teaching them to think, if we're giving people information, but we're not actually teaching them the thought process required to turn that into knowledge, and if they do get that knowledge is irrelevant, well, maybe we need to rethink it a little bit.
What's your most memorable lesson from your own school days, or one that you've enjoyed teaching, and why do you think it stuck in your mind?
This is a bit problematic for me, actually, this question, because I thought about it, I reflected on it, and you know, the lesson that honestly sticks in my mind most is when our English teacher, and I did really love my English teacher because she was really laid back, but also she gave me loads of encouragement. She said to me and my friend who sat next to me, Rupert, this is in the last year of high school, like year 11, said, look, you two aren't learning anything here. Like, you've got it. I think just take the day off and go up to London and go and look around some art galleries. And we did. We were like that. Well, she's given us the day off. So we just got on the train and went uptown. And that was the first time, you know, Rupert was like a middle class kid. And, you know, he was into art. That was the point. And I was getting interested in art, looking at paintings. I was interested in all that. And he was a really good artist. So we just did it. And we went to the Royal Academy. And I'd never been in an art gallery in my life. And then this early 1980s, we went down to Covent Garden, and he was into graffiti art. So this is the early days of hip hop art. And he had like a sleeves cut off his denim jacket with a canvas on the back of a piece of art that he'd done. And all these people, he was like a celebrity. Like, everyone was coming around to look at his art. And that was actually, I grew up on the outskirts of London, and it was like a white working class community. And that was probably my first meaningful interactions with black kids of my peers, actually, now I think about it. and that was Covent Garden, London, about 1984, 85, something like that. And yeah, that was a thing, you know. I mean, my most memorable lesson would be this Tuesday, actually. I'm working as a supply cover teacher at the minute. I'm doing that, which is a new thing for me. It's like a whole new gig. On Tuesday, I had a session with a kid, and he's in year 7, very lively. Obviously, he's one who came in straight away, taking over the room, you know, running around, bouncing. And I carry a little temple drum with me, which is a very melodic, lovely sounding instrument. I got him to sit down next to me, and I said, have a listen to this, you'll like this. And then we did an exercise where you have a conversation together, where I play a little bit, he plays it back, and we just messed around. Then he had a go by himself. Then I just played it for a while, and there was this beautiful vibe in the room. And he did his work, you know. He just sat there and did his work next to me, and he was looking at me. He had a quizzical look on his face, but it was like that. And then at the end, 2 girls in the class went, "You're the best teacher ever. No one's ever got him to be calm, ever." So like they've been living with this kind of, you know, bouncing kid in their class all term, up in the class, getting in the way of their education, and all of a sudden, and it's not, it looked good on me, but all I did was I took a really nice sounding instrument that and took a bit of time to play it with him, and then put some vibe in the room.
I think that's it. I don't think it's necessarily the instrument. I think it's that connection that you had and taking the time to show an interest in him. And again, the opportunity for him to engage with you in that musical conversation.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
think
I
that,
agree. Yeah, it gave him voice,
yeah,
and I mean, hopefully that can happen again. I mean, it's handy for me. That school is actually just 10 minutes walk from my flat, so I'm hoping they'll have me back again. They had me in the day after, because normally I'm traveling a bit further than that. But and then if that's the case, then I know next time we'll see whether it works again.
yeah.
Of course, it's not a given that it will.
No, it could
You
just
know.
have been a gimmick, but it could just be that connection, that communication, that time that you showed an interest, and yes, the soothing sound. But I think it was so much more than that.
Yeah, it's interesting doing the supply cover, because I introduce myself to the students. I let them know I'm not a teacher. I am a supply cover supervisor. So, you know, here I am. I'm, you know, managing the room, but I'm not a teacher. I'm a poet, a musician, and a rapper. And then they go, "You're a rapper?"
Mm.
And then obviously I have to perform a piece of spoken word for them. But then there's now as well, there's always, not always, but there's often a couple of kids in the class who fancy themselves as rappers.
Mm.
So then they all want to battle me. And that's an amazing level. I mean, it's just amazing. I do get a hammering. You know, I'm bald. You know, they rip me straight away. They rip me for being bald. Yeah, I've got glasses. No one's actually got stuck into me for having glasses, but I don't care anyway, because it's just bringing their voice out. It's funny.
Yeah.
And I do some freestyles with them. I show some of my freestyle skills, and yeah, it's a beautiful conversation. And it brings out those young people's voices. And then also, and I think this is really important as well, holding that role as teacher, but it makes me vulnerable as well.
Yeah.
You know? And they get to see me make myself vulnerable, so it's role modeling that for them in terms of them being expressive, but also it builds rapport. I mean, that, okay, if I'm in the middle of like a freestyle rap session with some kids, that's pretty close, you know, and you don't expect all teachers to be able to do that because it's a fairly specialist skill. But any form of creative activity together, it's going to build rapport. So, I mean, especially if you can do that on year 7,
Yeah.
as the young people are going into this big institution for the next 5-6 years, you're going to lay foundations that can really help people out further down the line.
I think that vulnerability and that co-creation is key, actually. You know, not being the person standing at the front, knowing it all, showing you the slide 1, slide 2, slide 3, there's your worksheet, off you go. I think that co-creation, showing, like you said, your vulnerability and working together, showing them it's okay to take risks within the classroom, within your learning, and then modeling that gives them permission to do the same. And that is so powerful. So, Martin Dawes, what is next for you?
Well, supply cover teaching, I feel really excited about it. It's a challenge. I mean, I'm really embedding creative pedagogy in the curriculum there, like really. And it's a very privileged position being a freelance artist, and I've done a lot of it for an extended period of time, and I don't have that privilege anymore. So I'm having to work harder in terms of holding the room, because I don't have a teacher in there to manage the room with me.
Yeah.
I mean, my class management's okay anyway, but I'm learning.
Yeah.
And I'm learning to be that calm teacher who's in control, you know, because a lot of the time I can go in and hype the crowd, if you know what I mean. I can go and get everyone buzzing, like, you know, do some quick poetry, like fast rhythms and blah, 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 and like get it hyped. But actually, sometimes, you know, if I'm there by myself, that isn't what we need. You just need me to be really calm. And I'm enjoying exploring that in myself. And then also I've got a band called Higher Ground. And we're just in the process of recording some of our first work. It's a new project, Higher Ground Global. And yeah, I'm really excited about that. There's music that I've written, and I'm performing it with a band who making really good music, and we're having a good time and enjoying our time together. So that's exciting. That's exciting for the new year. And, you know, yeah, just being creative, sharing that with people. Yeah. Enjoying community, enjoying my family, and you know, counting my blessings.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. I just want to summarize by saying that we've talked about opportunities, opening doors. We've talked about the fact that music bonds people and rap enables voices to be heard. And rap is music without the pressure of singing, really. It also is important, I think, in teaching to set the context for learning, and you do that within your workshops. And if we can do that, set the context for learning and provide opportunities to do things in different ways, then we're setting children up for their futures, aren't we?
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate that. And yeah, look forward to connecting with you again in the future.
It's a pleasure, Emma. Take care. Keep up the good work.
I hope Martin's episode has encouraged you to think about how rap enables voices to be heard and how versatile it is as a tool in the classroom. Next episode, I speak to Rachel Hall about the expressive art of dance. Rachel is a trained Royal Academy of Dance classical ballet teacher, master matwork Pilates teacher, Franklin Method educator and biomechanics coach. Here she is with a few words on what dance means to her.
Dance and movement, it's just, it would be a travesty if that just became less. It's a gift that keeps on giving. There's so much to explore. Creativity is a part of our evolution as humans. It's imperative that we remember we're creative beings. I feel like dance, in particular, because it involves the body, it helps you to explore these different things. And gosh, well, this fits for me. Creativity, it just opens up a whole window, a whole portal of self-expression, rather than us just becoming cookie cutter humans.
If you're following this podcast from the start, I hope you've enjoyed listening to Series 1. If you're a new listener, welcome and thank you for joining us. In Series 1, we asked, does creativity have a place in education? In Series 2, we explore creative expression and why it is important for us all. In this series, I speak to painters, sculptors, musicians and dancers, to name a few creative disciplines. I already have more fantastic guests lined up for Series 3 and 4, where I'll be talking with inspiring individuals with a range of experience. If this sounds like you, maybe you have a view on creative thinking or creative expression, please get in touch by following me at ACPC4A, the number 4, on X, or Emma Palestanga on LinkedIn to connect. There are many ways you can support the show for free, and it's much appreciated. Share with your contacts, rate the show, or leave a review. If you like, you can buy me a virtual coffee to help with the costs of the podcast platform. Please follow this podcast so that you can stay up to date on the release of each episode. Thanks so much, and I'll see you on the next episode of Creative Minds Shaping the Future.